didn't know if fate could be altered, but I hoped for the possibility. The reason was simple. Some time ago, my bewitched ancestors commingled and permanently effed up my life. Thanks to them, the inherited magic I'd have sacrificed my virginity to live without was stirring again, most likely triggered by the stress of leaving Greenbrier. It whispered to me from its lair like a beast luring a curious creature to her doom. Not now, I thought. I was 12 hours away from starting fresh at Truxton High and desperate for an ordinary junior year, not to mention a deliriously ordinary life. Chillax, Hannah. What was that damn mantra? Right. Acknowledge, focus, and breathe deeply. I inhaled enough air to make myself dizzy. Crap, this was not working. The magic hummed to life, quiet at first, then loud like a banshee unleashing in my head. On the outside, I tried not to make the weird face. Instead, I focused my gaze on the dashboard and clenched my jaw, waiting for the magic's slow crawl back to its dark cave. Aunt Jocelyn, or Aunt Jay as I like to call her, tapped her thumbs against the steering wheel to a crappy disco song on the radio. "Everything okay, darling? You look like you have cramps." 10 minutes from her home in Annapolis, and I was already wishing I was back at Greenbrier, mostly because of the cramps comment, but the bad music wasn't helping. I swiped a blonde tendril away from my eyes and shot her a look. "Gross, not cramps, head hurts." She pursed her lips in the way that always filled me with dread. "Your head hurts, or are you trying to suppress the family legacy?" A hard lump formed in my throat as she unleashed her suspicion. "You know I don't want to talk about it." Tears welled in my eyes. I couldn't talk about it if I wanted to. A year and a half ago, that legacy of magic drove my mom so crazy she killed herself. A few months later, my frustrated dad followed her lead. If only I'd done something to stop them. If only. Days after your dad's funeral, when you begged me to send you to Greenbrier, I guessed it wasn't just grief and anxiety that was overwhelming you. But I let you go because it was what you wanted. However, it's been a year now, and all I'm asking for is the truth. I hate it when her guesses were spot on. I wanted help to deal with it. A single tear betrayed me, trailing down my cheek. How could ordinary therapist help you stifle your extraordinary magic? I ignored her attempt at a compliment and wiped my face dry. I needed to learn how to suppress the emotions that bring it to life. She'd witnessed the damage it had caused. "Where's the fiery spirit you once had?" My gloom phased to anger and my eyes flashed fire. "It's dead, along with my parents." "That's enough." She lowered the radio volume. "It's not dead. You're suppressing it, but you can't suppress what you are. Only in accepting your true self can you live a happy life." On the verge of my fresh start, my aunt had the nerve to sound like a philosopher. Didn't she understand that all I wanted was to not be a Fitzgerald for once? "I'm not worried about my spirit or being happy. I just want to be ordinary, and I don't want to talk about it anymore." "Ordinary? As if you could be." I bit down hard on my tongue, crossed my hands in my lap, and focused on the piece of jewelry I cherished. Beneath the passing streetlights, the enchanting gold ring shimmered in a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. I always loved seeing that ring on my own dad's finger. He always told me the Irish heirloom held tight to a secret. I nodded, not taking my eyes off the Fitzgerald crest. That's what Dad always said to me. He promised one day I'd prove worthy enough to unlock its mystery, but I don't feel very worthy. And don't say it's because I'm suppressing what I am. She said nothing. I just don't feel much of anything. You'll feel better once you take something for that headache. I have magnesium citrate powder at home. Your dad used to take it. I shot her a half-dazed glance. Magnesia what? Don't worry about it. She stopped at a light before entering the city limits of Annapolis. We're almost there. She probably forgot I wasn't a little kid who couldn't remember where she lived, although now it was where I lived too. I know. I glanced out the window at the historic marker noting the witch's grave, a gnarled tree leaning over the Spa Creek bank where centuries before 3 witches had been executed and buried beneath its shade. A shiver shook through me. What else could come of being a witch? Nothing good. I knew that much already. And everything will be chrysanthemum, she said. I'd nearly forgotten about your shop talk, I said with a half smile. That's what happens when you work with flowers all day. Chrysanthemum means wonderful, right? A breeze swept through her cracked window, tousling runaway strands of chestnut brown hair across her prominent cheekbones. Yes, everything will be wonderful, she said with certainty in her voice. But I wasn't so abso-freaking-lutely sure. Lightning flashed, followed by a rumble of thunder jolting me alert. A tempest churned over the Chesapeake Bay and was rolling toward town. I stared at the clouds, ready to calculate how much time we had before the rain hit. Another bright flash of white-hot lightning forked across the purplish-black sky. 1, 2, 20. Boom! The storm was at least 4 miles away. I pressed a hand over my chest, feeling the thumping slow. I glanced at Aunt Jay, who was no longer bopping her head to the bad music. Instead, she blinked over and over and rubbed her eyes with one hand. If you're tired, I can drive. Who needed a license when I'd already mastered a moped along with the Greenbrier golf carts? Her slender fingers searched for me as if I were a ghost she could only hear. She grasped my arm tightly. Hannah? Panic drenched her voice. My eyes widened. What's wrong? I can't see. I see something, but it's not the road. What's wrong with me? I peered out the windshield. A distant telephone pole grew bigger as her foot stuck to the accelerator. A frightening swell of adrenaline flooded my veins, sending my heart into a frenzy. Stop! I yelled, but she was frozen with fright. I grabbed the steering wheel and threw my leg over to jam on the brake pedal. It was too late. Absolute silence fell over us in the grim second before we plowed into the pole. My lower body slammed into the dashboard, while the seatbelt squeezed hard against my ribs. Metal groaned. White bubbles deployed. Glass shattered with a scream, or maybe the scream was mine. The car groaned to a halt with a hiss and clank. Stillness settled over us. My head was reeling as I checked myself for injuries. Bursts of pain sparked from my chest and leg. Hannah? Aunt Jay's quivering voice reached out. I pried my eyes open. She had escaped her seatbelt. Her lips and hands were trembling, but I saw no blood or broken skin. Inwardly, I sighed with relief. Are you okay? She asked. I sucked in a shallow breath. Me? Fine, I managed, not wanting to stress her out, but I struggled to breathe, and my left leg was wedged under the intruding dashboard. She reached over, wiping her hands across my cheeks and forehead, dusting away crumbs of glass. She touched her trembling fingers to the seatbelt release and pressed on it, over and over. Come on, damn it, let go. I pushed her hand away, restraining a whimper. It's okay. Go get help. She nodded and with a hard push shoved her door open. I'll be right back. A heavy silence fell over the car's interior until a hiss sounded from the engine. Within seconds, the smell of burning oil seeped in through the vents. One toxic breath went deeper than I meant it to. Ow! I coughed and writhed beneath the unyielding seatbelt, like a 5-year-old having a tantrum. Panic swept over me as I struggled for freedom. Stress vibrated deep in my gut. Self-soothe, I reminded myself. The air grew thicker with burning oil, and a starburst of pain racked my body. I was going to die. No, how could I even think it? There had to be another way, because what if I couldn't send it back? What if it took me to the same terrible place it had taken them? I peered out the window, searching. There was no one. I turned my focus on the glove box. Maybe Aunt Jay kept a knife in there, or a pair of floral scissors. I pushed the button hard, again and again. Jammed. My heart raced. A burst of smoke puffed into the car's interior. I coughed and closed my eyes. The pressure on my leg intensified, and the sickening fumes filled me with dread. F it. I balled my hands into fists. I recalled the spell I'd overheard my dad utter once. I recited it in my head before casting, making sure I had it right. By the power of fire, I do summon and churn, and call thee forth to blaze and burn. I stopped breathing, trying to sense any changes. I felt no different. And then it filled my core like a warm sphere of energy. Quickly, the power expanded into a blazing inferno. My back arched, pressing me harder into the seatbelt as my internal fire surged. Every cell jolted awake. My heart pounded out of control as I imagined channeling the smoldering energy. Suddenly, my hands tingled with intense power. I swallowed hard and aimed my fingers at the strap. The fiery threads trickled out in a wiggly pattern until I steadied my hand. The seatbelt burned orange, then cooled to black before separating. I sat there wide-eyed for one full second, partly in disbelief and partly in revulsion. I leaned back, drained, feeling the heat recede up my arm and back into my core where it simmered down. I squeezed my eyes shut and waited to feel ordinary again. A thunderous boom roared. The car shuddered, sucking me out of my daze. Flames licked up from the engine and through the broken windshield. Suffocating billows of black smoke glugged in from the vents, urging me to get the hell out of there. With shaky hands, I jerked the loose belt through the latch and grasped the door handle. I jiggled and jiggled while shoving my shoulder into it over and over with no success. I leaned toward the driver's side to escape, but a jolt of pain shot up from my trapped leg. Ah, crap! I rammed my shoulder into the passenger side door again as hard as I could. My weakened muscles quivered. I slapped the vents flat and bashed my hands against the partially open window. Another flash of lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating a tall, shadowy figure in the distance. Was it a hallucination? Was I already going crazy from tapping into the magic? I stared hard. The figure approached quickly, like Mercury racing toward the car. I drew back stunned while he fought with the door. He seemed real enough. "Who are you?" I asked through the window's narrow opening. Darkness obscured most of the boy's features. However, the glow from the fire radiated on the skin of his neck, where the tendons strained as he wrestled with the jammed metal. The faint light also illuminated his eyes. The color was several shades lighter than Arctic ice, lending them an otherworldly quality. Thunder rumbled louder. "Someone who shouldn't be here," he replied. The tenor of his voice caused my heart to pause on a whisper of breath before speeding up again. "Well, what does that mean?" I stammered, pressing a hand to the window. His gaze settled on my ring as if he were taking in the details of the Fitzgerald crest. Then he froze, his chest and shoulder muscles bunching beneath his black jacket. My lungs filled with another gulp of rancid air. I coughed and gagged, fanning the smoke away. I glanced over my shoulder, remembering the family picture that was tucked away in my duffel bag. I wasn't leaving it behind. My gaze drifted back to the boy. He was no longer frozen. Instead, his hand slipped from the car door and gripped around the sides of his head. Then he doubled over as if he were in agony. My stomach dropped. "Oh no, what's wrong? Tell me, please." He straightened slightly, offered me an unforgivable look, and took off running into the darkness. My hand slapped against the hot glass. Was he leaving me too? I couldn't handle another person leaving me when I needed them. Inwardly, I freaked out. Tears trailed down my cheeks. "Don't go. You can't go. Come back." I moaned from the intense pressure on my leg. This was not happening. I was so not going to stay trapped in a fiery sedan while the remnants of a stupid disco song played in my head. I sniffled the tears back and stared at my plastic captor. With a huff, I worked on the dashboard, trying to free my leg. After several intense palm heels, my hands went numb. Drained of energy, yet desperate, my eyes searched for another way, a possibility. Then I saw something by my feet. A spray paint can, probably dislodged from under the seat during the crash. I reached for it and brought it closer to my eyes. Water-based floral spray in midnight blue. My aunt's flower language came to me without effort. I'd never been so agrimony in my life. The smoke grew thicker. I held my breath and wrapped both hands around the can, aimed and thrust the hard cylinder against the glass over and over. A small crack appeared and filled me with hope. Operating on pure adrenaline, I threw my shoulders into the action and slammed the can as hard as I could against the barrier. Smash! The safety glass crumbled. I used the can to clear a bigger opening, and then I gripped onto the window frame and pulled. My arm muscles shook. A shock of pain shivered through my leg. I screamed, but kept heaving my body upward. With one last grunt-filled effort, my leg released. I dropped onto the street in a fume-filled stupor, hacking and gasping for air. I groaned from the hard landing, but I didn't care about the pain. All I could think about was how that bonehead had left me. Who leaves a girl trapped in a burning car? Shadow of a boy, I thought. Then I remembered my bag. Crap. The rough cement pressed into the tender skin of my palms and the blood pulsed through my tingly left leg as I struggled to stand. I wrestled with the back door, which wasn't as damaged. After several heaves, it opened just enough to remove the duffel. I hobbled across the street with my hard-fought prize and plunked onto the curb. Alone and in the dark, I peered around at the empty side street. "Hannah!" Aunt Jay shouted. "Over here!" She rushed to me, cupping my face in her hands. Holy salt, sulfur, and mercury. I glanced at her with surprise. That's what Dad used to say when he messed up one of his chemistry experiments. "Chemistry," she remarked, turning her head toward the burning wreck. Stress washed over her features, causing every tiny facial muscle to crease. The parking garage attendant called 911. I'm so glad you got out, she tilted her head. How did you get out? I bit my lip, not wanting to worry her with what happened. The seatbelt finally released. Well, that's a relief. Who cared about the seatbelt when that wretched shadow of a boy had left me pissed off and with a zillion questions in my curious brain? Sirens screamed, growing louder as they raced toward the blazing car. Within seconds, the area filled with firefighters working to extinguish the flames. I looked at Aunt Jay. What went wrong with your eyesight? I don't know. She stared at the wreck, her eyes glazed over with shock. And now, I squeezed her hand. And now we'll be fine, I assured her, even as I silently cursed the instincts that told me that was a big, fat lie.